government approach. That interministerial collaboration is not yet strong. And for me, I'm bringing this because this is not only health, but it's cutting across. That's the efficiencies we are talking about. Joint planning, implementation, budgeting, especially some of the programs that really, and I'm glad that we are talking about now human capital development, you know, and all these blocks of government that we are put together. But it's not yet there. So as we are talking about tenfold growth, we must enhance one government intervention so that we cut overlaps and duplications. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and that's an issue I want to come back to, but let's first finish this round. So Dr. Mirkarize, just back to what are you going to be doing differently in the department to strengthen the implementation of the strategies that have been developed?
Well, that's a good one, and in line with the discussions from yesterday, we have to improve efficiency in execution, and we have to put food on the table. We have been cooking for a while, but I think what the ordinary Ugandan cares about may not necessarily be outputs. They want outcomes. They want to see an improvement in their standard of living. They want to see the number of jobs we are creating. They want to see how we are contributing to the export base. So increasingly, we are going to be outcome focused, and we're also going to put the limited resources that are given to us in areas that give us the highest chance at achieving better productivity gains. The second point I'd make is, and to augment what Dr. Diana has said, is the whole government approach that really started in NDP3 with a program-based approach. It needs to be reinforced. When you look at the ATMs, we look at science, technology, and innovation, including ICT and the creative industry, as really not a sector, but an approach to the economy. So our role needs to be salient in how we are supporting the other parts of the ATMs, the agro-industrialization, the tourism, and the mineral development. Ultimately, almost everything we touch has another sector that has a key role to play. And then lastly, leveraging the policy shifts in the West, especially in the United States. We have a lot of diaspora talent that has been left stagnant. And this is talent that we can leverage. So one of the things we should be doing is initiating a diaspora reintegration program to see how we can tap that talent to support fast-tracking progress in our ATMs.
Great, very good. Thank you. And Mr. Basil.
Yeah, thank you very much. In terms of expanding the markets, the ministry is continuously going to negotiate and execute regional value chain trade agreements. Right now, there are issues of non-tariff barriers that each country almost is looking inward, and negotiations have to continue, including bilateral negotiations. The ministry received funding to deploy trade attachés. We are looking at some of the key targeted markets, like China, UAE, Tanzania, and others, so that we can try to make sure that we negotiate for the penetration of our products into those markets. Secondly is to strengthen the standards infrastructure, because the government has established regional testing laboratories, but that's not enough. They need to be equipped fully so that they can be able to support our producers, our exporters. And this definitely goes along with the cross-border infrastructure, the trade, the one-stop border posts. This infrastructure, they also need to strengthen them, because failure to strengthen the border posts, then there are NTBs and hindrances to export our products or to clear the inputs coming in. That put aside, of course, we also need to continue capitalizing UDC which is a strategic development arm of the government. And we know that there are many projects that are in the pipeline that need to support in collaboration with UDC. And we have seen some financing put aside to support that area. So in our view, if all these are handled, then we should be able to see the tenfold export growth strategy being actualized. Another area definitely is to do with market studies, because we are aware that these exporters and all of them, they need market information. And we hope that continuing to carry out the market studies information through the digitalization, e-commerce, and all these platforms should be able to support our SMEs and other exporters. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much. I'd now like to come to the question that Piasa Twine raised about a one government approach, which you also touched on when you talked about the importance of other sectors, and ask each of you is that as we face the implementation challenges that we've talked about, what needs to change to help the government as a whole to move to a more integrated one government approach? But I'd ask you to take that perspective, take your departmental perspective on that. So what would you want in health, for example, PS, as the most important first step, say, towards a more integrated one government approach?
We've started this. We've established interministerial committees that, first of all, when we are looking at a problem or something at hand for solving, we expect that all the agencies that are involved to be part of that discussion at the time of planning, at the time of budgeting, the time of coming up with particular indicators, performance indicators, how we are going to track these indicators. And then we agree that when it comes to M&E, we need to have one M&E. Because one M&E, ultimately, you are looking at what you have achieved together. But in that, we separate who is doing what, because what has been happening is a lot of overlaps, and you find, for example, if I just talk about just that case I talked about in nutrition. Nutrition without food security under agriculture will not be able to achieve. Without environmental or Ministry of Environment and Water being available, without local government as the entity that implements, knowing what exactly how to coordinate, without gender to look at, you know, the youth, the women, the vulnerable groups. So when we sit together, then we agree on who does what. But when it comes to evaluation, we need to see that we have one M&A. And I think this NDP 3 and NDP 4, the arrangement is good, because now we are coming together. Although we are not yet there, because the concept, although we talk about it and it is written in our strategies, it's not yet well understood and well implemented. But I believe if we continue like this and we foster, when we talk about this, some of the programs that are that are coordinated under the Office of the Prime Minister, we are brought together, all of us together, and then each one must account on what they have done, so that holistically, then we see the impact of what we set out to do together as a country. But also, when it comes to budgeting, we need to see that we stratify the funding sources so that there is no duplication. Recently, when we were looking at the sanitation, and we saw so many funders, I was shocked. The room was like this, was full. of people who are in the space of, you know, sanitation and wash, and yet when it comes to really looking at M&E of wash and sanitation, each one has their own docket. So that way it will really help us to optimize resources, because here really, ultimately, our overarching goal is to bring efficiency, value for money, making sure that any money invested goes to achieve exactly what we set out to do. Whether it comes from the partners, whether it comes from government, it must be well aligned. And for us in the Ministry of Health now, we are saying one plan. Whether you are a partner, you must align with what we are doing. You must declare the money so that we have one plan, one budget, and implementation well streamlined, so that we make sure that we are able to assess the investment value. Thank you. But also digitization. Digitization, by the way, is like, for me, I equate it as oxygen we breathe. Digitization will help us to map the whole landscape of activities in government. And our tools, our digital tools, should be speaking to each other. If I am doing death and registration if I get a death or a birth, when a patient comes to get medicine, I need to see that whole interconnectedness. That way, it helps us to do real value in budgeting, in planning, because you have real data on real time, and you put value, you put money to really where the evidence, it's like evidence-based financing and result-based financing. Thank you.
No, thank you. I think you've touched on a number of extremely important points. I think just this last one about just how important it is for governments to make effective use of their data, and governments accumulate masses and masses of data through service delivery and other things, and digitization is crucial. I think also on the one M&E approach, clearly governments need to have a single unified way of measuring those things, and that's very important. DST, if I may, let me sort of give you a slight change on the version of the question, which is ministries of finance tend to like to lead from the front. Now, could you tell us from your standpoint at MOFPED, how do you see the one government approach? And what do you think are the sort of key things to make that effective?
Thank you very much, Philip. Picking from what Diana has mentioned, we need to break the barriers to silos and create that efficiency with which we must identify what must enter into the budget each financial year, consistent with the plan that we have. In where I sit, I see that the program approach to budgeting and planning and budgeting is a very vital instrument that must be seized in order to melt away those barriers that Anna is talking about. We need to remove away the big person mentality, where the lead person in that sector tends to over-influence the allocation of resources, even to areas that have got little contribution to the overall program approach to the budgeting. The big brother mentality must be removed. And we must pick leaders. And I think the Minister of Health is demonstrating it by what Diana is saying. Leaders who see the same eye, like the planning and budgeting function of the government to deliver on the program. Leaders who understand what it takes for them in their own responsibilities to contribute to the targets which are set in the program. Leaders who are willing to cascade the knowledge about resource allocation and resource planning down to the lowest level of the policy analysts at the lowest level, so that you grow the understanding and appreciation of the choices we are making right from the initial stages of formulation of the planning and budgeting for the resource allocation. If we do that, and we are trying to do that most of the time now, by doing three things. One, in our sectoral programming and planning, we involve a number of planners in all sectors who are deployed right from the center. And we also have inter-program discussions and appreciation of what they need to do in their contribution to the tenfold strategy. There, we expect to get a buy-in of all the sectors, all the programs, into what we want them to achieve as we put aspirations to that. And the most powerful tool to do it is through the budget. If something does not add to the tenfold growth in sectoral planning and budgeting, in program planning and budgeting, then it doesn't deserve any shilling. Allocative efficiency, which I talked earlier, is a cornerstone of the fiscal discipline that we must have, apart from, of course, when it comes to implementation of the programs. Two, we link the budget together with the various projects and programs, which Diana, part of them she mentioned. For example, if you have a WASH program, you have environmental program, you have a program in education, there is no need for us to have so many disjointed initiatives which are delivering on purportedly the same direction, but somehow they are totally leading to a waste of resources and difficult to monitor. So the overall M&E framework is very, very important. And we have tried to do a lot in terms of the development of the program implementation action plans with the UNDP and the programs themselves, which clearly point out that under this program, the program implementation action plans, which are going to monitor, must be able to address the needs of the program, but also must benefit from the resources in terms of resource allocation. And we move resources from those areas which we see are wasteful, whether it's within the same program or across programs. That's our job at the Ministry of Finance now, to move those areas that matter most. Most importantly also, we are looking at the whole integration of government systems, the ICT area that Diana alluded to. We want to seize the opportunities provided by the IT systems and the AI in order to do a number of things in the various programs to eliminate the room for duplication, eliminate the room for procurement, the delays and corruption alleged in that area, and so on and so forth. So all these are building blocks for us to break the barriers of the bureaucracy, of the big man syndrome in one sector, trying to take advantage of being a leader, to having a common goal in terms of program planning, budgeting, monitoring the results of that budget at the end of the accountability period. And where resources are wasted, certainly we should be able to also mete out appropriate punitive actions on those areas. So briefly, that's what I want to say about the issue about that M&E in government, and not only to have it at the Ministry of Finance and leave the rest. By the way, if we leave out the rest of the ministries, our task to achieve tenfold is going to be a dreamland, because they, ministries and departments, are the ones to implement the tenfold program. The private sector is the one to implement the tenfold program. So it's our interest to enlist their support right from the planning, budgeting, resource allocation, and monitoring. But monitoring them requires that we must have a system that should be able to tell us real time what is happening in a particular sector in line with the targets that we have set under the PIAPs.
Right. Thank you very much. Mr. Basil, just you could also say from your perspective, what are the most important things to move towards a better one government approach, and linking that perhaps to some of the implementation challenges as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Of course, priorities have been provided, and we are all developing our programs based on the priorities that have been set up at the national level. And we work together with the local governments at the district levels, and we make sure we participate in their planning processes to make sure that we all harmonize still at the central level. So it's important that we continue collaborating with the local governments and the private sector in trying to implement our set strategies to be able to achieve the set priorities. That's what we do at the ministry level. Yes, and this also brings in line with the collaboration also at the regional communities, because we have the East African Community, we have the COMESA, and then African Union. We all fit in the same set of objectives. Therefore, we continue to have those regional and bilateral meetings reflecting on our national strategies as well. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And Dr. Cosmas.
Yes, I think it's important for us to redefine the one government approach to include the private sector from the get-go. Because we cannot plan, I would call it inbreeding. We plan when we are government alone, and yet the private sector is really where the rubber hits the road. I have one example of where we've found this quite efficient. We developed an e-mobility strategy by bringing everyone that had a contribution to make in the room, all the way from the private sector to the policymakers to the financiers. And you realize that we've been able to get quite a bit of traction in e-mobility because we had the buy-in from the private sector right from the start. Because we can't sit in our boardrooms and craft policies without the people, the policies are going to impact, having their voice heard. The second point I'd like to make is, again, on the program working groups, they've been quite efficient, but there are some gaps. We've noticed in practice that there's a lot of enthusiasm during the budgeting process when there's a cake to be shared. But when it comes to accountability, the enthusiasm is a little bit dampened. So we need to keep that level of enthusiasm even when there are no resources to be shared. Because sometimes some MDAs already have resources that they can use to contribute to achievement of a particular output or outcome, but you find their voice is not even on the table because people think that if you bring this one on board, then that increases the number of quote-unquote mouths to be fed. So let us not look at program working groups solely at instruments for the budgeting process, but look at it as an instrument for achieving wholesome, synergized execution mechanisms that will lead us to the tenfold growth strategy realization.
Great. Thanks very much. We've talked a lot in these 2 days about productivity, and the focus has really been rightly on the imperative of increasing the productivity of individuals and firms across the economy as a key driver for the tenfold strategy. But there's another way in which productivity is important, and that's public sector productivity. And in an era where resources are going to be under a lot of pressure, public sector productivity becomes even more important than it has been historically. So I'd like to start with you, DST, but then give everyone an opportunity just to comment on how you and your department are thinking about this challenge, and even in detailed levels of rethinking recruitment or rethinking promotion structures or rethinking ways of working or any kind of things. Just be really interested to hear what thinking is about how we can move forward with a more effective public sector.
Thank you, Philip. I think the way I see us improving the productivity within government, in the private sector, and economy-wide, is that we need a very skilled workforce that's generated by a number of institutions who are producing the various skills that this economy requires, and be able to deploy them on merit to those areas that matter most in terms of the impact of the contribution of that skill into that particular sector. Secondly, the critical role of IT becomes very, very important, because it was mentioned yesterday, I think, that a small change in the technological advancement in a production process leads to higher multiplier effects in the growth agenda of that firm, that institution, and also that private enterprise. Or even in agriculture, for example, research on AI that gives us better variety of crops, yield per acre, the application of technologies like irrigation, application of technologies like the manufacturing processes, value addition processes, is very, very critical for us to deploy in order to improve productivity per acre. We saw this data yesterday that although our comparative advantage is in agriculture, and everybody talks about it, there is also mining area, everybody talking about it. But if you want to get to the market and compete favorably in that market for the value-added products out of agriculture, out of the various sectors, mining, and so on and so forth, you need to have appropriate technologies to drive that process. And that does not take place without you deploying the requisite skills to be able to do that. So from a public sector point of view, our biggest emphasis will therefore be investments in those areas or programs that advance technology and deployment of technology in order to improve productivity across government and also the private sector. But most importantly, the private sector, because those are the people who are going to give us the growth that we want. Two, we also need then to be able to monitor how that deployment of technology is consistently delivering us to the markets where we are going to compete favorably. Of course, we shall also need to do a number of compliance requirements, which are those that will make us access the markets under competitive terms across the markets. So if we did that, I think we shall have made a contribution towards attainment of our tenfold growth and improvement in productivity in the economy, both private sector and public sector. But there is a need to skill also where I sit. Public service needs to be skilled very well in terms of responsiveness, the needs of the private sector under the programs that they serve, so that theirs is facilitating role with the skills that are necessary to drive the process forward. We are talking about negotiations in East African community. At times when I go for some of these meetings, you find it's just a roller coaster thing, replicating and then forwarding the thing to the next level and so on and so forth. When you come back from that meeting, what did we agree? We agreed to remove tariffs. What's happening when you come back? Tariffs are still there. To the contrary, even some tariffs are increasing. That's not the way we should work as a service, both in Uganda as also in the region. If we want to achieve better productivity of the service, to serve the private sector in order to serve governments further in expanding the economy.
Great. Some very important points. Yes, Diane, if you could come to you.
This topic of productivity, actually I had it on my list. It is extremely important in health because we want skilled personnel, highly skilled personnel that will be able to provide medical tourism. And medical tourism has been one of the sources of income in countries like, countries like India, Turkey. They are earning a lot of money through medical tourism. And this can only be possible if you have the right skill in the country. And all we need, just two approaches. The first is to invest in training of these specialists. which we have not been doing adequately. Number two, create an environment to attract many of our Ugandans in diaspora that are running many hospitals. If you go to South Africa, most of the hospitals are run by Ugandans. All the specialists are there. We just need to create an environment that will foster the return or attract the highly skilled personnel into the country. And when we do that, we do investment that commensurate to that is in line with the skill that we have. If you bring a neurosurgeon here and you do not create an environment that you put equipment that is going to be used, then this neurosurgeon will go back. So as you attract the human resource that is matching the level of investment you want to make, then you go ahead and make smart investment. And I can assure you, this one, as day follows night, will be able to contribute so much to the tenfold economic growth by just having the skill in the country, specialists in the country, investment in equipment and our hospitals. You will see all our neighbors they will be coming here, and that way we'll be earning more money through medical tourism. But also, we are losing so much human resource when we train and we don't create an environment for for employment. Then we keep on getting brain drain. Brain drain has been one of the biggest factors here that has led us to stay where we are, because all our skilled teams, even industrialization, when we talk about pharmaceutical industries, if now we advertised for the pharmacists, industrial pharmacists, we hardly have anyone, and most of our industries here, they get external, foreigners to come and work here. So really it has to be an intentional output, and this discussion cannot be concluded when we don't have public service, because really this is the gist of the matter. The human resource capital, even when, like a country like Singapore that does not have the natural resources, they have relied heavily on their human capital. And really the area we know that investing in the human capital is the beginning of transformation, and not just the skill, but also the mindset. The mindset, it has to be intentional. Even in schools, even everywhere, the mindset of knowing that whoever, even a child, has to know that I must contribute to Uganda because Uganda needs me more than Uganda needs me more than I need Uganda. That kind of mindset. So we have to do a lot of re-engineering, systems re-engineering, processes re-engineering, and also skill gap assessment, and make intentional efforts to skill those gaps that we don't have. For example, skill gap registries. In the ministry, we are going to start. For us, we are coming up with a registry of skills that we have in the country and the gap, and we cost it, and we come to finance. Yeah, we discuss with the money is coming. I've been told the money is coming. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much. I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome the Governor, who has been juggling an awful lot this morning. So it's a great pleasure you've been able to join us. So let me put you on the spot immediately. We've been talking about how each department is contributing to the tenfold strategy and what they see as some of their key priorities on the department level, but then also where some of the challenges are in terms of implementation, which is one of the themes that's come out strongly in these 2 days, is the need to focus not only on strategy, which seems really well developed, but also on how that then translates into practice. So I wonder if you could just say something about how you see the bank contributing to the tenfold strategy, what perhaps some of the challenges are, and then one of the questions we did talk about is there a need to do some things differently going forward? So any thoughts you have on that?
Thank you so much. And a very good afternoon, my fellow panelists and the audience down there. First of all, my very, very sincere apologies for coming late. I had a meeting which I could not avoid, so I don't need to go to details. But thank you for accepting to share my thoughts on that. So the tenfold growth strategy, beautiful strategy, good objectives, and really meant to get this country out of where it is to the next level. It has all the good things about it. But the fundamental question is the financing available for it? I think this is where we need to have a serious conversation. How do we mobilize the financing that we require for raising the GDP of this country to $500 billion by 2040 from the current close to $60 billion now? Now, so if government tried to say we can mobilize all the deposit, we can mobilize all the financing for this, it would be a lie. You are going to violate all the debt metrics that you can think about, because the amount of investment required is quite significant. So there's what government can do, and therefore there's what the private sector must do to contribute. In the absence of the private sector participation in this, it's going to become very, very difficult. So that's why I'm going to make my intervention. Now, to me, macroeconomic stability is the bedrock of this tenfold growth. Outside macroeconomic stability, we will not achieve the tenfold growth. And why am I saying that? When I talk about macroeconomic stability, I'm talking about, one, low and stable inflation, a stable exchange rate, a sound financial system, good collaboration with the fiscal authorities to ensure that all our metrics are in place to sustain this growth. So why am I talking so much about price stability? Price stability is important because we need to mobilize resources from outside, from those who are currently outside the financial system. And you can only do that if the rate of return on the financial assets that they are going to hold is stable or is known. In a situation where you have inflation that is galloping, I have no incentive to leave whatever assets I have, land, property, cows, pigs, to come and put a deposit in a financial institution or to buy a government security if inflation is over the ceiling. So in order to mobilize the resources outside the banking system, the rate of return must be good enough, and a real rate of return that is adjusted for inflation. So it means that you need to have low inflation. And why are we talking about more savings? We want to mobilize more savings to sustain the investment that we require for this long-term growth. Not only working capital, but also long-term capital. If Bank of Uganda is going to issue a 25-year bond, how am I going to be convinced to hold a 25-year bond if I do not know where inflation is going to be? If we're talking about long-term financing, I must be confident that I have my inflation, my rate of return for this investment is in there. And then also it is important for structural transformation to move people out of the money, subsistence economy to the money economy. This is what happens. Now, let me come to one thing. The ATMs are going to improve our current account balance. Currently, we are receiving a lot of resources in the financial account under foreign direct investment for the oil and the gas. And soon we will begin exporting oil and gas. We are going to have significant inflows from exports. We are going to start buying gold for export. That is going to also increase our export receipts from gold. Currently, on a net basis, we are only earning about $200 million from gold. Let's not be deceived by the $3.4 billion we are getting from gold that is all exports. No, we are spending about $3.2 billion importing raw gold. So on a net basis, we're only getting $200 million. But if we began buying gold domestically, it means that is going to increase the value addition from gold, even by $600 million, $1 billion. And all that's going to have an impact on the exchange rate. It might cause even a Dutch disease for other sectors. So the only way you can fight against the Dutch disease is by having low and stable inflation, so that your real exchange rate is depreciated in order to support other sectors. So that's why we're talking about the aspect of macroeconomic stability being a bedrock. There are some who are arguing that the appreciating currency is not supporting exports. I think we need to avoid being simplistic here, that exchange rate is the magic tool for exports. We need to look at the overall cost of doing business for the export sector. And then we have a conversation. How do we lower the cost of doing business for the export sector so that we are able to increase the profitability of the export sector other than just looking at the exchange rate? So trying to probe the exchange rate by depreciating it so as to support export is not sustainable. It's not sustainable. But in this thing, we need to have a big conversation on how to lower the overall cost of doing business so that we support the export sector to achieve the ATMs. That's one thing. Can I go ahead, Chair? Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of what is the role of the financial sector? The role of the financial sector is no longer going to be business as usual. We have to change the thinking of the financial sector. One, currently the private sector credit is about 26 trillion Uganda shillings. To be able to support the tenfold growth, simple arithmetic, we need at least 260 trillion in private sector credit. The big question I have is, can the Ugandan economy mobilize 260 trillion in savings to support this? So that's where we need to have a conversation. The financial sector has got to change the attitude. They have got to change the way they're doing business. It's no longer business as usual. We need to be more innovative in that area. So for me, the critical thing that I would like us to consider here is, one, currently, if you look at our fixed income products, it's only Uganda government securities, treasury bills and treasury bonds. We need to expand this. The Minister of Finance has, in his wisdom, constituted what we call the Uganda Fixed Income Market Committee to see how we can broaden the products under the fixed income. So in that committee, we have agreed that, one, time to issue bonds like Sukuk, green bonds, infrastructure bonds, diaspora bonds are very critical in raising long-term financing. So whereas we can work around the guidelines, the legislation for the issuance of this, the challenge now goes back to the Minister of Finance. Do we have sufficient projects in place to uptake the resources that we will mobilize from this? Because the demand for these resources is actually there. Okay, but we need to prepare the projects that should uptake these resources. I'm glad the Minister of Finance in the budget speech for 25-26 announced that he was going to issue a Sukuk bond, and the project has been well defined. So we need to scale up the preparation of the projects that will uptake this bond. So if you're issuing a green bond, do we have a green project that's going to take this? If we're issuing a diaspora bond, is the project that we are using to finance this resource from, is it acceptable to the diaspora? You need to look at the characteristics of the diaspora. All right? There are some diaspora guys who may not support a government project. But I know that, for example, if we wanted to issue a diaspora bond to construct a stadium like Nambole, I think that one brings everybody around, okay? Because it's non-partisan, everything, that kind of thing. They will all want to have a nice stadium, okay? So what are the kind of projects that diaspora bond can support? Infrastructure, do we have those projects? Are they prepared? Are they working very well? Now, that's one thing. But how do we unlock long-term financing to feed into these bonds? I think we need to reopen the conversation of pension sector reforms in this country. There's a lot of long-term liabilities sitting with the pension sector, looking for long-term assets that can transform this economy. So long-term financing is very critical in supporting the tenfold growth. And we need to seriously begin having a conversation of how do we mobilize this without really I mean, let's be candid here. There are different interests in these pension sector reforms, but the tenfold growth should be supreme. It should supersede all these selfish interests around pension sector reforms, and we move ahead. And then, of course, we need to maintain a stable financial sector to intermediate these resources. So we will have to ensure that the regulatory framework that governs the financial sector is up to date. The digital finance, financing that we're looking at, we have enough cybersecurity guidelines to promote that. And then, most importantly, we need to ensure that Uganda does not go back into the grey list again. So we do everything possible to preserve our being out of the grey list in order to attract financial flows. Because if we go back to the grey list, it means that flows here will become hard to come. So do everything possible. And then, of course, the other thing is we also need to continue to think about the capital basis of the financial institutions. If you are going to mobilize financing, take for example, the other day, some bankers went to some steel company, asking this steel company, by how much can we increase your credit lines for you to, for working capital? You know what they told them? No, we don't need credit lines. Can you give us money to go and mine the iron ore in Chigezi? That's big money. So, how can our banks put their heads together to think of such projects that are going to add value to the existing minerals in our country here, so that the factories take advantage? And that speaks to mineral development. How can these groups, banks that have got these holding groups, how can they use that group structure to mobilize big resources for infrastructure developments? Their conversation has got to change. It's no longer about being individualistic, but working together as banks, we can do that. The aspect of implementing ESG in our financial sector is critical, because we need to attract cheaper financing in the climate area. And then finally, looking for capital to de-risk businesses in the financial sector. So we need to have a conversation, how do we get capital to de-risk the lending from the banking sector in order to grow the private sector credit. There are lots of things I could cover, but I'm told I'm starting between you and lunch. Let me leave it there. Thank you.
Very good. Well, thanks very much, Governor. I'd now like to open it up to all of you and really open the range of themes that you want to raise to, of course, all of our participants here on the panel who represent a number of different departments, the challenges more generally of the tenfold strategy, the challenges of implementation that we've talked about in these days. So I really want to open it up, and I'll take probably 5 or 6 questions, and then I'll give each of our panelists a chance to respond to the questions and make any final closing arguments that they would like to. Okay, yeah, let's start. You're the gentleman.
Thank you so much, Chair, for the very first opportunity. My name is Bonnie Kagawa, and I'm coming from private sector. I run a safari company. It's a tourism company. Unfortunately, my PS didn't make it to the panel. But these are thoughts maybe from the sector, from which I wanted to bring. Mr. Patrick Ochelap, what's your...
Sorry, could I interrupt you just a sec? Could I ask you to be concise? Because
Yes.
I think we don't have time, unfortunately, to have lots of long contributions from the audience. But if you could be quite succinct in the key points you want to make.
Sure. What's the ministry's strategy to really market the tenfold growth strategy to the private sector? We seem not to really understand. A few of us, and yet the governor has just retaliated the fact that the private sector shouldn't really be left out. Should you come up with probably a program to us to really understand this so that we can be better in position to really market and also include in our strategies the tenfold growth perspectives, because we have a huge contribution to the strategy in the next 15 years. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Vinom Chaatha, I'm the Executive Director at Codeware Think Tank. My question is directed to all of them. I have not heard them talk about reducing public administration expenditure, because I think that's a big thing. The government undertook restructuring of the agencies, but we still have a big public administration expenditure as a country, and the president recently pointed the issue of the parliament. We have a parliament which is 550. I think we don't need such a parliament. So I think we need to be intentional and propose those reforms to reduce that and then save money. But the second thing, of course, that you didn't talk about is corruption. You have not commented on corruption, which, according to the IJG, consumes 9 trillion of our budget. If our budget is 72 trillion and 9 trillion goes to is actually stolen, and we are not talking about reducing that. Finally, I think our strategy does not specifically invest in research and development. And I was thinking that we would invest in centers of excellence if we are talking about producing skilled Ugandans who are actually going to work. But finally, I like the point that Dr. Tini raised. This is medical tourism. The medical tourism is an important area, but could we then propose to invest in those regional hospitals, either for in the country as centers of excellence, that then could attract the medical tourism, but also save the money that our people are taking to India and Turkey. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Before I take another question, unfortunately I know the PS Health has an urgent sort of travel need now. I just wanted to invite you to share any final comments before you need to leave us.
On the issue of private sector, I totally agree that private sector contributes a big part, and we really encourage that the public sector must be part of this strategy of the tenfold, and just we take note of that. On the issue of public administration expenditure, I think that one, for me, I still have a big gap. I want more workers, so I will not talk about that. Somebody else will talk about that. On the issue of corruption, I think we talked about, when I talked about efficiency and value for money, investing in systems that really, and digitization. For example, digitization for me in the health sector is making amazing inputs. Because I'm able to, now we are cutting salary, we are not paying salary. If you have worked for less than 15 days, you don't get a salary. And that one can only be seen if you look at the system and the output of the worker. And I mean, digitization is cutting out corruption in terms of medicines preferred. Where we have deployed digital tools, we are seeing the stockouts completely going down. So there are certain interventions that we must do to enhance efficiency. And so when I talked about high impact investment, to invest in high value or high impact interventions, we are talking about the human capital, quality, efficiency in how we operate, to cut out duplication and have effective M&E. All those are supposed to help us to cut the corruption, but also dealing with the corrupt, so that then it sets example that corruption is not tolerated, and that way we are able to save money. Because really, ultimately, our really objective, our overarching objective, if you remember, I said we need to build systems that are sustainable, that will help us to propagate development and growth. Number two, we must put systems, or we must invest in systems that encourage us to have efficient efficient implementation and cost effectiveness, because if you lose time, you also that is also not efficiency. So cost effectiveness and efficiency interventions. That is, so all that are supposed to cut, not just corrupt, because corruption, you know, people think just to take money is when, if I don't show up at work when I'm being paid, that is corruption. If I work less hours than I'm expected to work, that is corruption. If I influence to make a decision to bring in people who are substandard, who are not skilled because of corruption, that is corruption. So corruption is cutting across in all this. That's why we are saying systems and processes re-engineering. I think those are my comments. Thank you very much. Allow me to leave, sir.
No, thank you very much. Yes. Yes, please. Yeah.
Hello.
No, sorry. First, the Deputy Assistant Commissioner.
Thank you so much. Mine is on the diaspora investments. Just an observation, learning from other countries what they are doing. In Kenya, they have a diaspora circle, and it's doing well, and they're in 17 countries. We can learn from them. Somalia, they have remittances at 6%, which is the lowest in the region, and it's attracting a lot of participation. And then from Ethiopia, they have a diaspora bond that is matching investment grant, and they are contributing to their government initiatives. I think we can learn from other countries and see what we can do. Then another observation was most of the diaspora in Uganda, Ugandan diaspora, are not, they do not qualify under the investment regime as investors. If we want them to be in the investment arm, we can provide them a specific incentive. We need to map them up and see their potential, because you might find that some of them can really qualify as traders but not investors, looking at the thresholds that we have in Uganda. Thank you.
Very good, thanks. Any questions from over this part of the audience? Okay, here, this gentleman here towards the back.
Yeah, thank you very much. Dr. Geoffrey Mutumba is my name. I'm an energy economist and an academic at Chambago University. My question is on climate smart growth and institutional governance, and it's mainly spilling from the climate debate that was here in the morning, and that's mainly to do with the protection of wetlands and green belts, so as to be able to leverage a tenfold growth. But in here we have an issue of institutional capture. You realize that private individuals are destroying wetlands and green belts unabated, and yet in those places, some are cities and urban areas, the local government institutions that look helpless in what appears to be an institutional capture. So I would need to get clarification how we can strengthen these local government units to be able to stand up to the vision of the 10-fold growth.
Thank you. Oh, yes, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Engineer Kavma from Kira Motors Corporation. I have two. One is I like the discussions earlier on climate change. However, as we explore the options of climate change mitigation, there is need as a country to invest in developing policies and frameworks that handle Now, speaking about decarbonization of transportation, as Kira Motors Corporation working on electric vehicles, there is a concern of electric vehicle battery end-of-life management. And as we've been doing research, there isn't so much interventions from a policy perspective and framework within the country to explore this. So we would wish that as we plan our budgets, some of these funds are dedicated to this cause. And then lastly, a contribution by the governor. Sir, you made mention that there is a need to look for money, capital, to de-risk capital acquisition. From my area of practice, we've identified even with contributions through the green financing, where we are working with some of the development banks to de-risk some of that would be maybe capital acquisition for the private sector, as well as even commercial banks to come on board to lend money through asset financing. The appetite for this type of risk by commercial banks is a bit low. So they may be offering you what we'd call interest-free rates per se, and that's where they are saying that's the best case scenario we can provide for you. And you're like, if you're giving me 17.5% through asset financing, that's still very high. If I'm looking at one pushing adoption
research in automotive technologies, and these are the emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, robotics, etc. And so this is something that's going to carry on through NDP4 and the rest of the implementation period for the 10-fold growth strategy. Of course, you look at access. So gradually we're going to ensure that anyone anyone throughout the country is able to access some research facilities, some center of excellence within some minimum radius, so that they don't have to move 300 kilometers to Kampala in order to access a testing facility for a drug, to give an example. The last point I'd like to make is, again, related to improving efficiency of government. I think in the 21st century, artificial intelligence, data science, skills in these fields are becoming as foundational as writing, reading, and arithmetic. So we have to be deliberate to continuously retool, especially people in the public sector, where there may be limited incentive. Because one, if we don't do that, we're going to degrade our efficiency gains. But also secondly, working in the private sector may end up being a disadvantage, especially as the skills of the people we have working for us become obsolete. And so they may end up not being employable beyond the particular office they're occupying at a particular time. And then lastly, if you'll allow me, I think it's important for the government to work in private sector mode. We already have pockets of excellence where we have performance-based contracts. I'm not saying that we should scale that throughout government, but in the private sector, the stakes are high. You know that if you don't deliver on your targets, you probably won't get paid, or if you underperform year on year, you're probably going to lose your job. I think we need to raise the stakes in the public sector and improve efficiency while we're doing that.
Great. Thanks very much. DST.
Thank you very much, Philip, for the opportunity to come back on 2 or 3 things before I summarize. Bonnie asked the question, when next are you going to involve the private sector in terms of selling out the tenfold growth? I'm pleased to say that under the DPI Development Plan implementation, stroke private sector program within the NDP4, we have a structured way of engagement of the private sector. Perhaps what we need to do is to enhance it much better and involve the larger part of the private sector. Manufacturers, beyond manufacturers, there is a lot of private sector in agriculture, there's private sector across all sectors of the economy, in research, in medicine, and so on and so forth. So what you're emphasizing is that we are going to structure programs that will engage the private sector together with the public sector along the program areas in ensuring truly that the needs and requirements of the private sector to participate in that program are addressed. And this should be the first call on resources to improve the performance of the private sector. It's a very, very important point that you make there. Reducing the size of public administration, well, I think it's a very good question, but I think the forum may require further consultations to answer that question. Because you mentioned Parliament, we shall need to consult a different forum also to arrive at the right size of government. Corruption, I think Diana mentioned a very good thing, that among the things that IT systems and integration of those systems can do is certainly elimination or reducing corruption to a bare minimum. Because most of it now is on systems, which is why we are at the center developing the e-procurement system, the e-governance system, and a number of all these other systems which are supposed to be integrated. And that's the role of NITA-U to guide us on the overall policy of integration of government systems, to arrive at very clear monitorable indicators, to have very clear targets, and be able to real time see where a tendency for corruption is likely to lead to loss of public funds. So we shall continue improving that area. Research and development, I think this is one big pillar actually under the NDP4 and our overall strategy under the tenfold growth strategy. Diaspora instruments, I think we take your examples, we shall look and study that and see how best we can anchor some of these products to leverage the financing which is required for the wider part. Governor mentioned a number of areas, and I'm happy to see that the ready projects for implementation for the Sukuk bond and all those things, we now have a study fund beginning last financial year but one under the National Planning Authority. We have got a project preparation facility fund, and we are going to enhance that fund in order to help government quickly come up with bankable projects which can attract now all this financing. Kampala-Jinja Expressway has been there for a long time. These are one of the areas which can be attractive. Kampala-Mpigi, and Asante studies for Kampala-Bombo Expressway, and so on and so forth, are supposed to be areas which can be very attractive to quite a number of these capital to come into the country on long-term basis, but also to invest under the PPP framework. I think overall, in 1 minute, the two-day engagement in this forum have been very instructive. They have given us a very good platform for us now to put together those areas that are necessary for us now to move forward, monitor the progress, and certainly make our economy more competitive in order to drive the agenda of expanding exports, not only expanding exports, but growing the farms, and not only growing the farms, but growing the economy, the levels that we want to go to. On my laps is a program out of this workshop to prepare implementation work plan for NDP4 anchored on the ATMs and how we intend to grow the economy tenfold. The output of this engagement is going to be very, very instrumental in that exercise. I thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. On my side, I think I'm looking at how do we empower the youth and the SMEs, including the startups, because we have quite a challenge. These youth and the startups need some seed financing. They need workspaces. We have quite a number of institutions that can provide business incubation services, accelerator programs, and these need to be resourced so that our youth can get where to start from. Another area that I'm looking at is implementation of the service delivery standards, because until we reduce or simplify the bureaucracy, the private sector still has a challenge, because speed means a lot when one is competing with international markets. We need to have accurate data, because we have quite a challenge when we are trying to compare our growth strategies. So there is a need to generate accurate data and the utilization of this data. Yeah, by and large, those are the areas that I could summarize. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Governor.
Thank you. Very briefly, I'll touch on two areas, the diaspora and then the de-risking. Yes, you're right about some country examples that have issued diaspora bonds, but we need to go a little bit deeper. What was the intended amount? Or in other words, what was the success rate of that issuance? Because the whole story lies in there. Ask yourself, the countries that issued those bonds, what was the success rate? We have looked at a number of those countries and realized that most of them did not realize what they wanted to get from the diaspora. So what we are now thinking here in Uganda is that we need to do three strategic things to attract these diaspora resources. The first is we need to get a diaspora database. This diaspora database will be important in order to identify who are we going to target. How do we do this sensitization? Where are these diaspora located? And what are their characteristics? So that database is very, very important as a preparatory tool. And then we also need a diaspora policy. There's a policy in the offing, but we hope that it will be expedited. And this policy is expected to provide clarity, to bring trust, and strategic direction for engaging the diaspora. Because we need to ensure that we are guided by well-founded lines of engagement with the diaspora. So we need a policy. And then finally, we need to do some research in understanding the characteristics of the diaspora income, their remittances, and the propensity to save. Because unless you understand that, issuing the bond for the sake of issuing it might result into significant undersubscription. So we want to study the patterns of the remittances. How big are these remittances, and for what purpose are they? How much of that can be devoted into investments? So once we've done all that, then we are in a position to see how we can issue a diaspora bond. But importantly also, under the policy, what are the targeted products, the targeted infrastructure, or the projects that we need for the diaspora bond? That is a critical question in order to catalyze diaspora resources. On de-risking, I entirely agree with you that we can get some money, especially to de-risk the climate, which is perceived to be climate financing that is currently perceived to be risky. That's why in Bank of Uganda, we've rolled out what we call an ESG implementation framework. We are trying to make sure that our financial system is ESG compliant. And if a sector is ESG compliant, it becomes easier to attract those kinds of resources to do the risking in some of the climate smart financing areas. Not only that, we have also issued guidelines for climate risk assessment to all the financial institutions in order to help them in terms of mitigating the risks, also in terms of stress testing the impact of climate changes on the balance sheet of the banking sector. We've done that. All this is aimed at ensuring that our financial sector has the capacity to deal with the issues to do with climate, not only on the liability side, but also on the asset side. So I agree with you on the aspect of the risking, especially to the climate areas. But you can only do that if your financial sector is ESG compliant and has in place a mechanism, ways of tackling green financing in place already. So that's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Right. Thanks very much, Governor. Just in closing, let me share three quick observations and then ask you to join me in showing appreciation for the panel. What's come out for me strongly, I think, from the panel is the strong and consistent focus across departments on the tenfold growth strategy. And inevitably, each department has its particular perspective, but I think the consistency and strength of the focus is notable. The second, which we've mentioned before, is the determination to be evidence-driven in the decisions taken by government, the engagement with new ideas and evidence, the need for evidence, which we've just been talking about now on the diaspora bonds, but really across the government, a real focus on using evidence to drive these decisions. And then the third thing is the quality of leadership across government. I think I've been struck across these 2 days, but particularly in this panel, with the quality of leadership that we see in each of the departments. So I'd just like to ask you to join me in showing our appreciation for the panel.
Ladies and gentlemen, that wasn't enough. Can we appreciate our panel? Thank you, Dr. Jonathan, and your esteemed panel. We have a group photo. Dr. Albert, this one is really unfair, this particular panel. And I noticed there was meant to be a couple of people on the panel that didn't make it. Our PS tourism would have helped here. Yeah. Bagonza, Diana has left. There was also someone else on the panel. And we should have balanced this. So for any gender-sensitive people like me here in the room, this was meant to be very gender-sensitive, but the people didn't show up, and the other panelists could have helped, has also left. So when this photo gets released, please defend us. Please defend us. All right. We could add Diana by AI. I agree. Yeah. Please do take your seats. Thank you so much. Can we appreciate them one more time, ladies and gentlemen? All right, so again, my chair of the last session has disappeared. Okay, so where are the presenters? I could help chair for him. Oh, Timothy, please invite our discussant as we invite the speakers back. Quickly, we have 5 minutes before Dr. Richard and the PSST close. Our panelists, Timothy, please do this quickly.
Okay, I'd like to start by inviting Professor Okumu Ibrahim.
Yes.
Who was the discussant for the previous session, the one that we had just before this recent one. He was supposed to be the discussant, so I'd like to invite him to come take us briefly through that. And following that, we're going to take questions from the session that was to do with climate change. So I'd like to invite...
Yeah, we only have 5 minutes for those questions. Doctor has about 7 minutes.
So I'd like to invite the panel as well that facilitated the climate change discussion to come forward. You're welcome, Professor Okumu.
Thank you, Bana MC. We had 3 interesting paper presentations from Dr. Jean Sorin, Professor Mark Pardon, and Mr. Wilson Asimwe. Given the time constraint, I will start with the paper that was presented by Wilson Asimwe, and I'll straight away go to my areas of concern. First and foremost, we respect the paper that was presented by Asimwe. There was a recommendation regarding the executive order banning charcoal in parts of the country, which I found to be a rather bold adaptation strategy. Reason being that the enforcement risks creating informal markets and hurting rural households, of course, unless affordable alternatives are availed. Remember, for biodiversity to survive, the adjacent communities equally have to survive. Now, for an economy where poverty pretty much lives besides biodiversity, having an executive order banning charcoal could be going too far. Then, of course, the model assumes smooth transition to clean energy, and part of the examples that was given was LPG. But we all know that uptake historically of LPG has been quite low on account of affordability and distribution challenges. And part of the information that was shared with us was that only 80,000 cylinders had been distributed for free. That signals challenges in that recommendation. Then, of course, there was something to do with the trade-off framing, which is quite helpful, but the paper is rather not explicit enough on financing. For example, how will Uganda fund cleaner cooking, expand electrification, and transport decarbonization at scale? With respect to the paper that was presented by Sorin, what came through was the additional 4.3% of GDP in annual infrastructure spending, which from where I sit is fiscally daunting given our debt sustainability concerns. And of course, that raises questions regarding sequencing and financing modalities. Then, of course, with respect to focusing on climate strategic infrastructure, wherein Sorin mentions electric vehicles, solar, and clean cooking. Perhaps as a country, we need to first tackle basics such as grid reliability and transmission efficiency before scaling up high-tech solutions. And of course, what comes through is that institutional bottlenecks still live with us. For instance, land acquisition, coordination failures between central and local government. And of course, these are greater obstacles than financing itself. So for me, from where I sit, the governance challenges perhaps deserve more weight. With respect to the paper that was presented by Pardon, what comes through is that, of course, there was a strong comparison with China, which I found useful and informative. However, we all know that Uganda lacks the industrial depth and scale that characterizes China. Perhaps what is more critical to us are complementary domestic reforms. Then, of course, there is the element of the volatility associated with carbon prices. And for that, what it implies is that we might have to go slow regarding an industrial strategy on a foundation that can be destabilized by external market shifts. Then, of course, Uganda struggles with the measurement, reporting, and verification systems. What that means is that we may struggle to benefit fully from high-value carbon markets. I think I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, discussant, for those views. Will you take your seat? Do I have any questions? I was told that there were climate change activists in the room. Well, let's start here. 1, 2, 3. Let's go with.
Sure.
You have access to the mic. Yes, go ahead.
I hope it works. Doesn't, no?
There's no. You have access to the mic from the organizer? Yes?
No, it seems to be good. Okay, sure. I have a question or a comment with respect to the paper submitted by William Asimwe. And so this refers directly to your policy recommendation to promote use of organic fertilizers from non-organic or chemical fertilizers, which has nitrogen that leads to NO2. So now I would just like to caveat a little bit against that, or express a worry against this recommendation. And the reason for that is that nitrogen is something that plants urgently need to grow. So, and you cannot really replace this, to my knowledge at least, with inorganic fertilizers, at least not if you want to achieve the same time of yields. And I just want to point out to a worrying case that happened in Sri Lanka, who banned any inorganic fertilizer imports with the goal of becoming completely organic, and that then experienced a rice harvest drop of around a third. So I would be worried that this kind of recommendation could backfire, and I would just be interested in your thoughts on that.
Yes? Yes. One in white. Yes, please.
Good afternoon, panel. All the panelists really made very good presentation. However, I wanted to address this one to Professor Asimwe Wilson. I've participated in the Gates and Bill and Gates Melinda Foundation program with the African Union. It's called RAFS, and we're looking at the issue of desertification that is happening in the Corn of Africa. And one of the factors that we saw is that people go into swamps and they do afforestation because of poverty. Now, I'm here as a businessman, and we have come up with a very interesting model, which is a sustainable and inclusive economy, preventing such things from happening. And given that I'm in the agro-industrialization sector, I think maybe after the panel we may sit and have a conversation and see how we can harmonize this, because the willingness is available, the funds are available, and people have really an understanding, as the governor has said, that we have to focus on the macro economy to give sustainability and strength, looking particularly in price stability. So I think you presented a good paper, and we in the private sector are really looking forward to see how we can harmonize and come up with something that can give improvement on our tenfold strategy that government has come up with. Thank you.
There was someone here. I have space for only 2 more.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, for the session. Thank you so much to the discussant of this panel. To a certain degree, I agree with the aspects raised, but I'll divert a bit and disagree with you on the comment. First, tackle the basics. If, as a nation, we strive to have a tenfold growth, we cannot take on aspects as basic ways of doing things, but we need to take leaps and bounds. Let me bring back this discussion to the paper presented by Dr. Jin. I love the comment or the note you made that for every $1 invested in mitigation of climate change aspects, we save close to about $4 in potential loss. That's quite a sounding argument put out. However, also looking at the aspects of air pollution, where you made mention that over 2.5 particulate matter leads to about 2.2 year loss in terms of life expectancy. This is true because a research that we did regarding decarbonization of transport sector in Uganda, for a starter, over 31,600 Ugandans lose their lives annually due to air pollution. And this is again aligned to the need to foster alternative transport through electric vehicles for mass mobility and public transport. Let me bring this plane landing. You made mention of the need for energy mix, where we should harness the power of solar energy. However, I would be very interested to know, or for your opinion, on the cost and efficiency of solar per square kilometer, or rather per square meter in terms of sizing. Because again, it's a very instrumental enabler as we roll out electric vehicle and the charging infrastructure to even out the dips on the reliability of electricity, where our dependence is mostly on hydropower. Thank you so much.
Lastly, I'm told we don't have a lot of time. Maybe one from this side, yes? Write your questions and give them to the Secretariat. Yeah. I have been unfortunate that I must to chair a session for only 5 minutes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I came rushing for this session, actually, climate change. Climate change is nature's audit to human being on how we interact with environmental resources, and will keep its own ledger. I came late. I conduct an activity called Kampala Cycling Day, advocating for safe, inclusive roads that feeds into the objective of promoting quality air. Air quality in Kampala is degenerating every day, and that is impacting on health. Health is impacting on people's income, and the negative feedback loop keep getting worse as it gets. Ladies and gentlemen, we discuss a big number of forums like this, but if I walk into offices of each and every one of you and I tell you that there's a solution, electric bikes, it's a pedal assist you can charge anywhere. It's a tool. I've been cycling for the last 2 years, car-free day, emitting no emission. But the behavior, the habit, the tradition we have cultivated over years, a car as a symbol of arrival, we are not adopting some of these measures. They're available, they're on the market. When I go to an NGO, will tell me that our policy does not allow us to use bicycle. If I go to a private businesses, big one, they say, no, we don't do supply on electric bicycle. These practical are there. So how do we translate some of this discussion in boardrooms in an actual real world to solve some of this problem? We are being very cosmetic, and I'm using this, I'm talking about this as a frustrated person. I've been in this space. I cycled to attend Africa Climate Summit in 2023 to Nairobi, from Kampala to Nairobi, advocating for something practical, safe, inclusive roads that in the cities that are congested with cars, if we build roads that are inclusive for pedestrian and cyclists, people can able to commute easily to work. We waste a lot, we do a lot of economic loss in traffic jam, human capital hour lost, because you're commuting 20 kilometers using a car, you don't have roads. So some of these solutions are there. We need to have a shift in our behavior, in our perception, and stop looking at cars as a symbol of arrival and all that. If you go to Europe today, on a business day, you'll find a commissioner riding a bicycle in Amsterdam. You'll find a CEO riding. What's wrong with the third world that we are not able to adopt these measures and we're still gridlocked in the traditional way, and some of those things are taking tolls on our natural resources? Thank you very much.
Point well taken. I'll ask my panelists to respond to the questions that they noted very briefly. We don't have more than 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. I think I noted two different I'm going to give answers to two different sets of questions very briefly. The first one is on the funding. So the fact that, and you mentioned that, you know, for every $1, there's this study that for every $1 that we would invest today in resilience for infrastructure, for climate resilience for infrastructure, we would save $4 in the future. That does not solve the problem that we still need to find this additional $1 to invest today. And that is a problem I do not know how to solve. What I wanted to highlight is simply that there are opportunities like this. Investing in this resilience today can unlock funding opportunities, and so that's something that I think deserves to be highlighted. The second set of questions that I wanted to answer very briefly is regarding to the energy mix, and that's also related to a couple of discussions I had offline, which is that the question on solar is the value of putting 1 square meter or 100 square meter of solar high enough that compared to other sources of energy or other sources of electricity? And my answer to that is, in Kampala, maybe not. Maybe the land in Kampala and space in Kampala is very scarce, and so putting solar in Kampala is not worth it. However, with a very good transmission network, we would be able to put solar in places that have better capabilities and then transmit it to the places where there's a demand for electricity. And so that's related to, we really need to think of energy and electricity transmission and production as an ensemble, rather than just as, oh, should we put wind here, should we put solar here? All of these need to be thought of together. Thank you.
I just wanted to add from the water sector, we've been doing solar-powered hybrid systems. Even when you have a water supply that pumps water and it's connected to the grid and you want to improve reliability of that pumping system, you put a solar array, and we've been able to cut the energy cost by 70%. The energy cost for pumping by incorporating the solar array, you cut the energy cost for pumping by 70%, just to add. Mark.
I'll just respond briefly to the gentleman on the biking. I think you point to an issue of transportation policy, urban transportation policy, and in some related research, I've looked at this, and I think the take-home message is it's really, really hard to decarbonize transportation systems in urban areas. Biking is great, but you need to build the infrastructure. And building new infrastructure is going to take time. So putting bike lanes, we have really good bike lanes in Montreal, but it's controversial to put them in because you have to take away space and parking for cars. So there's probably public transportation, other forms of public transportation are great too, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge politically because people like their cars. So I wish you good luck, but it's just be aware of the scale of the problem here. So happy to chat further.
Asim, where you want to go to the questions noted?
Thank you for the comments. It's very constructive comments. What I would respond, I'll begin with the issue of burning charcoal and also putting measures to make sure that we save the forests or we save the wood stock. As you have seen that in a few years, like about 28 years, if we don't change the trend, we would have no wood in any forest in Uganda at this trend. And also the harvest rate, about 1.3 million tons of wood, which we harvest every year, is far much higher than the rate of regeneration of this wood in forests. And it's very hard to have, almost impossible, not only hard, to have economic growth without natural capital assets, the stock of these assets, sustainable. So we have to save these forests. And we found out that 92% of the harvest of wood stock in Uganda is used for firewood and charcoal, which means to save the forests, we need forest and wood stock in and outside forest. We need measures to make sure that we find alternative source of energy so that we can have the harvest rate lower than the regeneration rate of these forests, that a stock of wood can increase and that to have sustainable growth. And also, we found that the 10 growth strategy is key in giving us jobs, economic growth, and improving household welfare. But it increases emissions and also increases the harvest of wood stock. Then the medicine is to find an alternative source of energy to make sure that we have the 10-fold growth strategy, but we also have the natural capital assets increasing. Now regarding households using charcoal and firewood who are poor, government has put measures to make sure that there is alternative source of energy which is cheaper to these. One has been encouraging the use of electricity for cooking, and there are cooking tariffs where if you buy electricity beyond a given threshold, the price is halved, so that you can easily use electricity for cooking. And also special tariffs for education. Schools are getting special tariff, and this helps to make sure that in schools, when you go in productive sectors, you find education and a bakery, those who make bread, are the ones who use a lot of biomass, that is firewood and charcoal, in making bread and also food for the students. And also public administration, maybe in army, security agencies. So if we make electricity cheaper or other sources of energy cheaper to these, this will help to reduce pressure on the harvest of this wood stock. So far education already has a special rate. Then the other approach or program government has put up is the LPG. Government currently is producing LPG cylinders. I think you have seen some of them, they are yellow. They have GOU on them. And these cylinders are produced under the PPP program, and they are free, distributed free. And also, those which are private, sold at the Shell, Total, Mogas, and others, like Starbucks, government has subsidized. They are being bought at half price. So if you're a new purchaser of LPG gas cooking system, you discover that the price has almost halved over these cylinders. And such measures are helping transitioning. Then the other one is ethanol. Government commissioned the Bukona agro distillers, which is producing ethanol. And this ethanol is a cheaper way of cooking, but also the emission side is low. And all these are substitutes to using of biomass. Then also there is a subsidy on ethanol stoves and many more. These are listed in the NDP and also prioritized in the budget. So the recommendation of the paper was intensification and making sure that these are embraced by the economy, to make sure that even as we go back home, encourage the public, those you know, to make sure they embrace these government programs to make sure that we all transition to cleaner source of energy. Then also we have oil and gas, as we know, and this oil and gas in Kingfisher and the Albertine region as a whole, it has associated gas. And this associated gas is a program to make sure that we can transform this associated gas into LPG, which can be used for cooking. And all these measures, once they work together, there was a comment that the transition doesn't happen overnight. It's true, but once they are harnessed together, over time, transition is step by step. We shall see that by the next 10 years, the economy will have moved significantly. For instance, currently, about 1.7% of households in Uganda are using LPG. But the target by government is to make sure by 2030, at least we have 20% of Ugandan households using LPG. And now when you add on the percentage which would have moved to electricity and also other sources of cheaper and cleaner energy, we shall see transformation which can save the natural capital assets and also have our 10 growth strategy to make sure that it also harness increase in growth, employment, and also welfare of households. Then as I finalize, there was a comment that the population...
I thought, Asimo, you were concluding.
Oh, concluding, yes, okay. Yes, maybe just one second. Yeah. That the poor are being pushed into wetlands and forests to degrade the environment. Yes, poverty can push someone to cut a tree to sell that tree for firewood. It's for firewood or for timber. But government has put a number of programs to make sure that the poor are integrated into the growth agenda. And we have seen outcome in the shortest time, like the PDM. When you look at the PDM program and you see the achievements so far, it's huge from the grassroots. You find all of us, at least we have a relative we know who has benefited from the PDM and the transformation which has been done to these households. It's huge. There are other programs like Emyoga and others which government have put up, and it's helping to reduce poverty, which reduces strain on the harvest of natural wood or you know, those in forest and also forest for energy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Asim, discuss, and you have half a minute to conclude.
Thank you. Mine is to do with the colleague from Kira Motors that disagreed with my argument about fast tackling grid reliability. I think I'll stick to it partly because, like Asim has been saying, if you look at, for instance, an incentive like electricity cooking preferential rate. Now, it only makes sense if and only if there is grid reliability. Otherwise, even if in the midst of the tariff, but you cannot guarantee the quality of electricity supply, then wood will always be an immediate substitute. That's the argument I was trying to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
All the panelists, the discussants. Unfortunately, this is a very interesting topic to discuss further, but time is not on our side.
Yes.
Next time I will put in an appeal. Don't call me to chair a session for 5 minutes, please.
A petition.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Can we appreciate Engineer Gilbert and his panel? Engineer, we'll have a second round of the photo since the discussant wasn't in the photo. So I'll allow for the photographers to take this photo so that Professor Kumu is in the photo because he wasn't in the very first photo. As I do that, may I ask the technical team to quickly put up Menti? Because we are closing, we are done, and the closing ceremony will start shortly. Our broadcasters are here and they would like to conclude with the closing ceremony. As we put up Menti, technical team, this is my last activity with all of you, and it would be nice to get your participation. If you are on your browser already, you could go to menti.com and then you'll just log in the code. But if the QR code comes up, there you go. Please scan the QR code, and I will know how many you are as soon as you scan the QR code and participate. This is the very last activity. The governor wasn't here yesterday. It would be nice to have your input, so please scan the QR code. I would like to. Unfortunately, back end, it will tell us what your vote was, so it would be nice. Dr. Albert will know what. 21 of you are in, 23. Please, 24. We're about 200 people in the room. It would be nice to get half of you online. 37, thank you. 42, thank you. 44. When we hit 70, my team, I think we can then share the question. Kataha, I haven't seen you logging in. Where are we? 57? Almost there. 58, 59. PSST, you'll be the 70th, I guess. 63. 65. When it hits 70, let's pose the question as people continue to log in. There you go. So let's ask. We're asking, which of these policy ideas is the most critical? You know, finance people are good in numbers, so yeah. Is the most critical for export growth? Which of these policy ideas is the most critical for export growth? Starting now. 91 of you are in. It would be nice to hit 100. 93 are in. 96, 97. Menti.com. I'll go back just for you in case you've just walked in or you didn't log into the QR code. We only have 15 of you giving us your feedback. Are you still thinking about your answer? We are asking which of these policy ideas is the most critical for export growth? Lower import tariffs, better access to imported inputs, maximizing local content in exports, preserve market access to the EU by ensuring compliance, and strengthen services exports. 53 over 103, 59 over 100, 61 over 103. We are asking which of these policy ideas is the most critical for export growth? If you're home and you'd want to participate, I could go back. Just go back a bit. Let's see the code, because they can't scan the QR code where they are at home. If you're at home, you could join us, menti.com, and then log into our code 2164199. 2164199. That code will get you in and you'll join us. 111 of you are with us. So let's go back to the question. We're asking, which of these policy ideas is the most critical for export growth? 77 of you have contributed. It would be nice to get all the 100 in. 78. PSST and your team, DST, and all the directors were here. So the director budget is here. Budget director, we need more money here. We can see strengthen services exports. We need money here. But we seem to have competition from maximizing local content in exports. And they seem to be catching up really fast. There you go. We have a draw, do we? No? Okay. 96. 4 of you, before I invite Dr. Richard to make his closing statement. 98. Thank you. 100. All right. Please continue. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are closing. I would like to invite the country director, IGC, Dr. Richard Newfarmer, to come and make closing remarks. Big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Recognizing that I stand between you and lunch, which is a dangerous place to be for a speaker, let me make 3 quick points. First is, what a great conference. What a great conference. I mean, this forum has been, I think, maybe is really the best that we've ever done, and I think it really is quite a statement. You know, we started with Stefan Durkin talking about the aspirations of the tenfold growth program. I remember that green line that he drew of growth rate off the chart, and I think it captured well the aspirations of this program. But we talked about also the details of implementation, productivity, increasing public savings, taxation, savings generally, but also human capital. So, and also export growth, which we just talked about in the last session. In all of these sessions, I think we've seen really good ideas and born of evidence, and I think that's really the key element here. So not only did we see good evidence, we saw good ideas, we also saw a real energy and a commitment, particularly in the last panel, of implementation. I think that's really terrific. One takeaway that I had, particularly from the panel, it came out very clearly with PS Diane, who's argued for the importance of a one government, whole of government approach to implementing the program. And when you think about it, it really makes sense, because if you think about, just take one example, growing exports by double digits for the next 10 years. Think about what that means. It's not the responsibility only of the Ministry of Trade, because the Minister of Trade doesn't control all of the things that go into export development. Think about things like the exchange rate. You know, if the exchange rate is overvalued, exports get penalized. Or think about human capital. Exports need, to get productivity, you need investments in education. Or if you want to expand your tourism exports, you need a good health system that makes sure that pandemics are under control, or that HIV is under control, so that people want to come to Uganda and are not worried about the health. So this is or infrastructure. To think about infrastructure as part of export development. All of this requires the Ministry of Trade working with the Ministry of Finance, working with the central bank, and working with those agencies such as the Ministry of Health in order to achieve those goals. So thinking about the one government, whole of government approach to solving particular policy implementation problems, I think is really an important takeaway. Which goes to the second point, which is one that came out in several sessions sort of subtly, which is the issue of accountability. How do we hold ourselves accountable? Well, one of the side notes here is that the PS whispered in my ear at one point, you know, we really should put a list of policies together and think about how we can hold the forum accountable for maybe next year. So I think one of the things that maybe we can do working with the Ministry of Finance is just put together a list of important policies and maybe report back to you next year in next year's growth forum about how the implementation of those policies has actually transpired. So that's the second issue that I wanted to raise, is accountability. As we move evidence into action, there's room to improve. The third area that I'd point to is just a closing remark, which is the thank you to all of the people that really went into this seminar. You know, let me start with the presenters, because it takes a lot of work, both for the Ugandan presenters and the external presenters, to prepare these PowerPoints, to think through these things, to often review the literature, to often argue with colleagues, and they have done a tremendous job, in my view, in this conference. Secondly, let me thank also the staff of the Ministry of Finance. The PSST has played the lead role in all of this in making this happen, but Albert Musisi, Millie Cadeau, Rosette, they all have played a really important role in kind of attending multiple meetings via video. I now know when Albert's office is full of papers and cluttered because he won't turn the camera on when we talk via Zoom, but that's another discussion to have, I suppose. But they've done a terrific job in the Ministry of Finance as partners. And then I want to thank the IGC staff here locally, you know, Neil Kuch, Mary Teddy Nkajwe, Maria Olwelia Pava, and Andrew Warmer, all of whom have played an important role in this. So thank you. And then finally, I'd like to, I would be remiss if I passed up a quick thank you to the FCDO. FCDO has been a terrific supporter, not only of this forum, but also of the IGC generally and worldwide. And Philip Smith, particularly, I think, developed, is meritorious of a special thank you. And then finally, let me thank you guys. You know, I mean, the audience has been really super here. And so let's give yourselves a round of applause, and thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we appreciate Dr. Richard Newfarmer and the entire IGC team, Dr. Jonathan Leap. Can we appreciate them more, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you so much. He doesn't like many intros, so let me just say I invite the PSST, the Permanent Secretary and Secretary to the Treasury, Ramadan Gobi, to come and make his closing statement. Can we warmly welcome him, ladies and gentlemen?
Thank you very much. I think since we started yesterday, we have only gotten the governor. So the governor, you are welcome. Thank you. We started this conference as Dr. Newfarmer has indicated, with very many reminders, but one of them was actually from, I think, Dr. Jonathan, who said that growth is not the end. Growth is a means to creating ends. That's a good reminder. And among the ends is the jobs, is the good health, is the education, the household incomes, and so on and so forth. In other words, improving people's lives. We've also been reminded that we pursue the goal of growth, or growing the economy tenfold, and we must at all times adhere to good economic management. And I think the governor has landed it on the panel here, that ultimately it is the fundamental of keeping the macroeconomy stable. But also we were told yesterday that an outward orientation on taking full advantage of the opportunities in the global economy is very, very critical. And in that, the role of price signals and the need to grow farm productivity cannot be overstated. We have also been asked to raise domestic savings, collect more revenue, but as we do, be mindful of the farms that have to pay this revenue, and we don't subject them to what they call the harsh enforcement. We were also asked to improve further allocative efficiency. And I think my deputy has been emphasizing this because it is now our other name in the Ministry of Finance. By avoiding spending the little money that we have on non-tradables and on activities with lower multipliers, we are going to be very mindful of that. We have already been, but we have been validated. This forum also emphasized the need to mobilize more FDI as well as remittances from the diaspora to bridge the savings investment gap. Ultimately, exports will be the highway that will deliver Uganda to the 500 billion target. The $1 billion target we are having is going to be reached when we export. But to grow and enhance these export complexities, we must close the infrastructure gap. And to finance these, we need to access innovative financing because the traditional ports are either drying up or getting more expensive. At the micro front, we've been urged to grow the larger and more productive farms as we also pursue the SMEs, because those are the ones that pay the wages that we need our people to earn. And finally, at the Davos style panel here, it has brought to the fore the implementation challenge and how the actual implementers think it may be overcome in order for us to achieve the tenfold growth. Our pledge as a Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development is that we shall adopt these recommendations like we've done before and use them to inform first the budget for next year, but also our future plans. But implementation, as we all know, is a collective task. I therefore urge all colleagues in the government, but also the non-government actors, including our development partners, the private sector, the academia, and even our researchers, to work with us to turn these actionable ideas into results and outcomes. All of the time, let's all keep the eye on the ball, and that ball is tenfold growth. I'm very happy that I think Dr. Jonathan Lip has very well summarized. You can see the consensus across board that this is not, what we need to do. To our key partners, this conversation has been a very tremendous one. So thank you very much, IGC. Thank you for this collaboration and support. We sincerely appreciate your partnership, your commitment, and the difference it is making to this country. To the presenters, the panelists and the moderators. I should say were the oil that lubricates these conversations. The oil that is rich in evidence, in nuances, but also in the tacit energy that we have seen here. Thank you. And to the audience, we thank you for giving us a reason to keep talking. We've been talking, and we shall continue because you're a wonderful audience. Now, finally, to the ministry, the team, finance, as we usually say, thank you for keeping this ministry as a pocket of effectiveness and efficiency. Now that the task before us is to turn these ideas into growth, into jobs, into incomes, into exports, and improved well-being of Ugandans, I should show you something which we need to. Maurice, flash that. Is it there? We can all look at this. What do we see in this image? Everyone who has what? An idea. Some to criticize, some to proxenate, but also to generate more ideas. And you can see how the queue gets shorter and shorter and shorter as you move to the right. Now, I would like to encourage the colleagues everywhere in this government and in this country to leave these other queues and we join the last queue. It can't be one person. It can't be saying you are the implementer. Once we all implement, we join that queue, we shall turn all these beautiful ideas into $500 billion. And that number is magical. It will change a lot of things in this country. I now declare the 9th Economic Growth Forum closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, our PSST. Ladies and gentlemen, lunch is served. Thank you.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Hello, Kampala, Uganda. In response to the national call of strengthening the traffic security, Good Products Group HGO brand has officially launched the Rider Selection Campaign. Registration is now open. Visit www.riders.hgo.com. Complete your registration now for a chance to win exciting prizes including motorcycles, exclusive HGO gift boxes, and official rider vests, all while promoting safe riding awareness. This is how to participate. Pay the registration fee, invite 3 friends to form a team of 4, and your registration fee will instantly be refunded. Begin your journey of honor today. Don't miss this opportunity. Join the challenge, promote road safety, and become a pioneer rider. For details, visit the official Good Products website at www.hgo.com or call toll-free 0800-335-555 or visit our offices at Kingdom Kampala 3rd floor to register now and win prizes worth millions.
Every action has consequences. Every decision creates ripples. Every extra kilometer per hour changes lives. When you speed, a child loses a father. A teacher never returns to class. A business loses its owner. A community loses its leader. That delivery you are rushing to make, it won't matter to the family planning a funeral. That meeting you are late for, it won't comfort the child who grows up without a parent. That time you are trying to save, it won't bring back the lives lost to speeding. We are all connected. Your speed affects everyone. Your choices ripple through generations. Tofira kukubo. When you slow down, you are not just saving your life. You are saving all the lives that depend on yours.
Speed kills. Drive to arrive alive. Tofira kukubo. This message is brought to you by Uganda Broadcasting Corporation in partnership with Uganda Professional Drivers Network, Private Sector Foundation Uganda, and Maritime Cargo.
Taxation is a bit complicated, and the only way to demystify it and make it as easy to understand and to comply with is through engagement. Is there a limit to the number of cars a returning citizen is bringing into Uganda? Who has paid the excise duty on this water is not the supermarket which has sold you this bottle at 1,000. It's not the business. It is the man who is going to drink this water. We strongly believe that it will only be through such constructive engagement that we'll be able to broaden our tax base and build our country together.
Buza Commissioner. Now you can get direct answers. Send your tax-related questions via WhatsApp or SMS to 0790-141-887, and the Commissioner General of URA, John Musinguzi, will personally address them. Tune in to UBC News Tonight every Monday and Wednesday for expert insights and clear explanations. Buza Commissioner.
The stage is set, the teams are ready, and your voice could be the difference. Come wave your flag, sing your song, and back your favorite team as they battle for glory in the Total Energies CAF African Nations Championship 2024, right here on home soil.
Teens Crown, an amazing off-the-hook youth program, brings you an array of fun, exciting, and educative segments you do not want to miss. From red carpet moments to proms, youth empowerment programs to youth gig vibes, and so much more, Teens Crown will get you hooked. Only on UBC TV, every Saturday at 1:30 p.m. Don't miss.
This August, East Africa becomes the center of African football. CHAN 2024 is here, and it's bigger than ever. 3 proud nations, Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, united by football, passion, and power. From the first whistle to the final roar, 35 thrilling matches, live, only on UBC TV and radio stations. Wherever you are in Uganda, from the city to the village, UBC brings CHAN 2024 to your screen and your radio. August 2nd to August 30th, it's football like never before. One tournament, one region, one heartbeat. CHAN 2024, live on UBC. Feel the game, live the glory.
Program My School, a great students program and your answer to education perspective, giving you reason as to why you should pay school fees for a child's education, with items like student talents, thoughts, adventures, and skills showcased, leadership skills, and all other activities plus concerts in various schools in your locations. Remember that our children are our future generation. Don't miss Program My School.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, every story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC.
One-on-one with Michael Jordan Lukomwa.
A weekly face-to-face conversation focusing on accountability, inspiration, information, and sensitization of the public from the various sources, such as inspirational profiles.
Having a disability is not inability.
Every Friday 9 p.m., it's one-on-one with Michael Jordan Lukomwa.
Don't you see anywhere that you would give a credit in the fight against COVID?
My role as the owner of the country is not to, be preoccupied by giving credit to my servant.
We have said that if we are to talk to General Museveni, there must be certain conditions in place.
Is it true that you paid 5 million shillings to MPs that voted for?
Was brought to you by.
I'll call you every day, yeah, yo,
You can now get all the Chibuzi out with MTN voice bundles. Call all networks. Kubei Dondoro. Buy a 25-minute voice bundle for only 1,000. Or buy any daily voice bundle of your choice. Dial *100 *21# and select daily, or use the My MTN app. When we talk together, we are unstoppable.
You say that I blow his mind every time I'm activated. You just trying to catch a vibe. CC got you fascinated. Jump into a brand new ride. BMW riding, baby. I ain't gonna tell you lies. That's just how
we run one of the biggest live audience TV shows in the land. Now this involves a lot of prep, a reliable team of professionals. A stylist.
everything for this life got balance. Evidently no gallant. Happiness deep inside of me and nothing fit to steal. If my job life, I go job. To the people that go talk. I don't need your validation. Steady on my way to the top. So I pull up like a boss.
The artists.
Tekina tekikugyako obufukamira n'omwami w'ekyokunywa.
Bwe tuba nga bye tukola bibanyumira, you are welcome. Bwe batebibanyumira, we are also doing our own thing. Thank you.
Nze omuntu gwenjagala temujja mumanya paka wanaakola ennyo ave mu gallery.